So all right.
Nice.
So I think Mike, you wanna kick us off with what you had in mind. Um,
Yes, we
styles are
can.
certainly something that's been a major discussion point. I know was at Hacks Camp when we had that in October. Nikki and um, wow, I'm totally blanking. I need way more caffeine. Um, who's your project manager, Cassandra? I'm
Kendall.
like Kendall. Thank you. Jeez,
Yeah,
I am
she's
just
my manager.
so Nikki and Kendall might as well have just had their own conference at from halfway through till the after party and beyond, just talking about styles and the implications for CSS variables and things. So it's certainly a big topic. Mike, do you got something you want to show, or I can also try and queue up some examples of sharing style sheets around, because we could use some feedback in the way Simple Colors mixes stuff around things.
Now my demo just broke. Just 1 second.
Way of the world.
Yep. Yeah, if you could keep something like
I'm going to do a song and dance while Mike does that. So we, for some color standardization, Nikki did this element for us called Simple Colors. And so Simple Colors has a couple different ways you can use it. We've got a superclass export, so we can mix it into multiple projects. Primarily lit element is where we do a lot of our development. And so she's got a superclass in which she's written Sass. So we've got Sass that just basically generates a whole mess of CSS variables for us. And then we use those in two different ways. So it spits it into this Simple Colors super, if you will. And then we also have a shared styles component. So let me see what the shared Simple Color shared styles is its own repo. Wow, she has changed it since I last saw it. And Simple Color shared styles extends lit element, so we can either mix into existing elements or we can use this as kind of a base element definition. We also have some older things we've been doing with components where we need to bridge kind of global state, unfortunately. And for those, we end up having this request availability singleton pattern, which let me see if we actually use this one anywhere. Nikki loves adding in lots of flexibility for us as far as abstraction. Okay, that is used a couple places. Nice. And I'm in our mono repo right now. We have a mono repo of like 170 plus NPM repos. So a lot of times it will tee this up, or one of the ways we can tee it up, I shouldn't say a lot of times. One of the ways we can tee this up is doing a request availability. So I don't know when, in this case, the Hack CMS theme wiring is going to be applied to something. But from a timing perspective, I don't want to invoke all of our CSS variables to get injected into the page until something actually cares about having access to them. So what's going on with her request availability? And this is a pattern. This sort of starts to step towards state management. And I know it's something Nikki wants to showcase specifically around video player, is creating these kind of single elements that are managing something. And so the managing something in this case is actually adding an element to the DOM that then adds all of the styles in question. Now the styles in this case are just a whole mess of CSS variables. As you can see, as I scroll through them, a lot of them. Simple Colors is more or less there for just colors, but it does provide some additional functionality, like we can figure out what the hex code for the 8th level of red is, either in JavaScript without accessing the styles and applying it that way, or because of the way she's done the Sass, we can just name something such as simple-colors fixed theme deep orange 4. and get the same hex code. So we've used this across a lot of different elements that we have, either applying to kind of the top level of the document so that we get all the CSS variables to paint, or much more common is wrapping simple colors into something else. So for example, we have a multiple choice element. We'll use simple colors as a subclass of lit element in this case. And this is schema behaviors that wraps on some other functionality via superclass. But then in our styles right here, where we're doing our spread operator for super.styles, that is going to be pulling in effectively all of these styles and these CSS variables we have, not via the super, right there. So she's got simple color super, which then actually mixes into lit element with nothing else going on, exported, and then in this case pulled into multiple choice. So that then we have all of those CSS variables set locally, and it's not just for CSS variables because those could cascade, it's more so these. So she has a series of attribute-based selectors so that we can just say, hey, this element should be dark and its accent color should be purple, for example. I think accent color is in here. Yeah, there we go. So that if you said, hey, the accent color of this element is gray, an interesting paradigm that we can apply to individual elements is saying, okay, well, use the default, and that's what this default theme is. So the default theme connotation for us is that the elements themselves can say, hey, I am, and in this case, gray. But if the element said, I am red, and the element implementing this says, well, use default theme accent 6, that gives us an extremely controlled common color across the different spectrum. So we have the same hue of that color, no matter what the color ends up being. So then is applied into multiple choice, simple colors. Let's see, default gray for checkboxes. There's default, there it is, default theme accent 8 in this case. So using a combination of these variables and the attributes for like dark is how in an element like multiple choice, let's start there. And actually, I don't even think multiple choice uses the colors that much, if I'm to be perfectly honest. There we go. So there's some of the colors in question. Multiple choice isn't a great example for that. Self-check is actually. So self-check does darn near the same thing. Let me open that one up. There we go. So this is our self-check element that uses simple colors. And if I fire self-check up, self-check will leverage those differences in color like this, right? So this is accent color light blue, whereas this one is accent color red. Now, I'm not positive. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say I'm not positive, but this is accent color yellow dark. And so because of the way that we have these, if I take dark off, it flips to the hue of yellow at that exact same level, but you notice the text changed. So part of the reason we have those arrays of color information is so Nikki's basically teed it up so that it can be made self-aware of when a color is going to cause a contrast ratio accessibility issue. And so then if I flip this over to dark again and we do green, we more or less are able to create, because this is Hax wired, but so we're able to create this experience within this little element here that it can't be having a color contrast accessibility issue while still giving flexibility in certain ways that is presented.
Very cool.
Very elegant. We did something similar. We used a -- theme variable which can be set internally or externally. And so if you set like on your card component, you say, I want to use the accent color, and the accent color is like a dark, it should have a dark theme, for example. It would set, the component itself would set the theme variable, and then any nested components inside of that would check the context of that variable when they upgrade, and they would get an on dark attribute based on that variable.
Very cool. Have you done anything around pegging that to the user's preference for dark mode or light mode?
Not yet. I'm really excited about doing that. I think that would be separate from like the theme context.
Mhm.
I think that would be just using the media queries inside of different color selections to say like, if you've got this set, then use this color instead.
And whenever you're saying, do you have this set, how are you checking that?
There's a media query that you can do. I forget the exact syntax of it. I'd have to Google it, but
Google it.
I think it's like a media query that says like contrast selection true or
Okay.
dark. I think it's dark, light, and default or something like that.
Gotcha.
There's prefers color scheme is the selector in a media query, and then yeah, it's dark, light, or no preference.
Which is basically light, I think, right now for most people.